In this video, we're going to delve deep into the incredible story of Reggie Cole, his encounter and subsequent violent clash with the most dangerous prisoner in the U.S. history, Eddie Clark, aka the Devil. Explore his unbelievable journey from troubled childhood and criminal conviction as a teenager to the most respected and feared inmate in one of the most extreme and tough prisons in America, known as the one who faced the devil, and the unexpected turn his life story took in the end. Reggie Cole was still a young boy when his mother and siblings moved to Los Angeles from Louisiana in 1985. They moved to a place called South Central, a region where violence and crime rates were rising constantly, along with open gang activity throughout the area. Reggie was the youngest of his two brothers and sisters, just 10 years old. Since in that area there was a significant lack of work opportunities, the gangs were the only option to be able to survive in such a harsh environment. That's why his older brother Kenny, who was 15, joined one of the gangs to support and protect his family. Over time, he inevitably began to get into serious problems, both with the law and with the other gangs. This escalated into a big, violent, armed conflict between his gang and one of the other ones in that area. The members of the second gang decided to make a sudden and unexpected attack to eliminate their competitors. So one day they took their guns, got into a car, drove right next to Kenny's gang while they were standing on the street, and began shooting from the car. Unfortunately, Kenny was one of those who were standing there that day, and so he was killed. Since Kenny wasn't just Reggie's older brother, but also a close friend, Reggie was devastated by the news. He remembered what Kenny was saying to him, that he wished Reggie to be able to live a normal life. So for some time, he actively continued his attempts to achieve educational goals in school, while trying to suppress the feelings of loss. Unfortunately, the grief from losing his brother, as well as other hardships in his life, poverty, educational difficulties, and a complete lack of adequate work opportunities, led him to obtain his late brother's lifestyle. His poor, single mother of 4 couldn't stop him and relied on his support anyway. So he joined one of the gangs, which specialized in producing and selling drugs such as weed. He mastered the job, and his main responsibility was to sell the product. At this time, this was all he did, no big crimes. But soon he managed to get caught and arrested by the police. His first arrest at 16 years old, but since it wasn't that serious, he was released with a simple warning. Unfortunately, he was already too entrenched in the crime world, which he considered to be his ultimate reality. This would be the beginning of, and one of the catalysts for, future unfortunate events, encompassing his life story. After some time since the first arrest in 1994, when he was 19, he was accused of and arrested for the murder of a man near a popular brothel in South Central. In court, he was convicted of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole or rehabilitation, and sent to Calipatria State Prison, one of the most violent and wild prison facilities in the country. While he, among other convicts, was being delivered to the prison on a bus for prisoners, he saw the road to and the location of the Calipatria prison. For a long time, there was nothing but desert, but then he saw the prison itself. It was an interconnected complex of buildings and security measures, such as huge walls equipped with barbed wiring, and a large number of prison officers monitoring the entire prison area. The whole prison was just in the middle of nowhere, as far from civilization as possible, as if to securely contain the most dangerous and vile people on the planet, rejected by society. This is the place where his destiny will be shaped, and his whole life will change forever. The bus was finally crossing the first prison gate. The most important thing is that the wiring on the walls was electrified, so that anyone who touched it would be immediately electrocuted on the spot. He realized that this was the entrance to a literal hell. Since there was enough security equipment in the prison, there didn't have to be many guards, so the prison had about 1 guard per 50 prisoners. Just 3 months prior to Reggie's arrival, there had already been a famous, brutal incident between the guards and some prisoners. Because the guards tried to control the prisoners, which triggered their savage inner tendencies, they retaliated by mercilessly stabbing them with handmade knives. Reggie was informed about this incident as soon as he got inside the prison walls, so that he would know the order and the place he was sent to. He and the other prisoners were met with a cold-blooded gaze from the old prisoners in the area. And then everyone among the new prisoners was called out of the list by the guards to undergo an inspection to make sure they didn't have anything prohibited, such as drugs, weapons, and other contraband. They were given new prison uniforms and each brought to their individual cells. The layout of the prison was like a tomb, with only cement walls and no windows, and even the cell doors had only one small opening in them. When he first got into the prison, he made an effort to be almost invisible and not make any noise to prevent any possible confrontation between him and other prisoners. In the mere first months of his imprisonment, he already encountered many examples of horrendous things that were happening inside the prison walls. The most powerful, dangerous, and merciless convicts controlled the place as their own. They had money and drugs. They repeatedly and violently fought, killed, and even sexually assaulted other inmates. And all this in addition to the fact that there was absolutely no one to stop them. This was the beginning of his realization of the place he was in, and a cause for his mental and physical preparation for what would happen next. He quickly realized that he needed to constantly be on the lookout and be ready to protect himself at any moment. He noticed that, for this exact reason, many low-rank prisoners had weapons, such as knives, but those they made themselves from various materials. So he followed their example and crafted his own sharp weapon, the shiv, from a toothbrush. Every week, the prisoners had the right to go outside to the open area of the prison, where they could spend their time in the open air. He quickly learned about the prison hierarchy. There were regular inmates and the upper class, or bosses. He also picked up on the fact that many of the prisoners were members of various gangs. Since he had some connections and experiences with gang life, and also a desire to finally blend in with the crowd, he wanted to try to join one of the gangs. He carefully observed the activity of the inmates without attracting unnecessary attention, and tried to avoid any confrontations. But no one would accept him without an appropriate status or reputation, and unless he proves that he can be trusted. That's why he began training and preparing himself, since he was always quite skinny and small, to obtain a muscular, stronger physical appearance, and to be able to defend and prove himself in the future. Little had he known that, despite his efforts to avoid conflicts with others, he would simply get in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the leaders of the Calipatria prisoners was a big, 200-pound man called Eddie Clark, also known as the Devil, who had spent 20 years incarcerated in California state prisons. For him, the prison was almost like a home, and also a business. He was the biggest smuggler of weapons, drugs, and other contraband, which circulated throughout the prison under his control. This was a true empire of control, money, and power, and he was the one on top of it, having influence on both other inmates, and even the guards alike. So everyone tried to please him, and avoid becoming an object of his anger, and so too did Cole. One of the reasons everyone was so afraid of the Devil was his infamous life history, which proved his pure evil nature, and was the reason for his incarcerations. From an early age, he was already known as a savage with no mercy or compassion towards anyone. His criminal journey started as just a juvenile for violently beating another teenager to death, then for sexually assaulting an elderly woman and shooting her son during a robbery as an adult. To be marked by the Devil was to be marked for either death or sexual assault. So Reggie's training over the years would prove to be vital for the upcoming events. In the open area, inmates were checked before returning to their cells. It was not uncommon for guards to find a weapon hidden in the sole of a shoe or tucked into a waistband, if not someplace stranger. And one unlucky day, someone fired an 8-inch dart from a homemade slingshot at a correctional officer. It missed. The dart struck a nearby gatepost, but a shiv was found in a cotton glove on the ground next to the Devil's cellmate. Cole happened to be in the yard, painting on work duty, and the Devil called on Cole to take responsibility for the weapon. It wouldn't have made his legal situation worse since he was already sentenced to life, but he quickly realized that this was the moment to show and prove himself to everyone, that he isn't that little, scared boy anymore, but a man who can defend himself on his own. So Cole refused, accepting any possible consequences, saying, "Nah, it ain't mine." Everyone stared in complete silence and shock and began preparing to witness a scene of vicious revenge, or as the Devil put it, taking out Cole. During the following weeks, Cole was preparing for the worst. On the morning of November 28, 2000, the Devil approached Cole in the yard. and not fatally stabbed him in the side with a knife. He whispered that Cole was now his slave and tossed the weapon into the grass. Shortly after, Cole managed to nurse his wounds and decided on the details of his final decision. He had no other option but to kill or be killed. Cole prepared and hid his shiv, made out of a toothbrush. He waited until the time when all the prisoners would be in the yard again. And when he finally saw the devil sitting on his favorite spot, chatting with guards and other inmates, he quickly approached him from behind and stabbed him in the neck. The shiv punctured Devil's voice box, and he began suffocating and bleeding while staggering on the grass, helplessly pressing his hands against the wound and looking at Cole in shock and confusion. Every inmate and guard was terrified and frozen, unable to process what had just happened. No one knew what to do because nobody expected something like this, especially coming from Cole. In a matter of minutes, guards started yelling, "Get down, hands behind the back." Cole lay on the ground, saying, "I already know what I did. I proved that I'm not going to allow others to suffer from the hands of this bastard anymore. He was my only target." Soon after, he was arrested, and now he was faced with not only his previous sentence for the 1994 murder, but also the possibility of the death penalty for killing the devil. His trial, held in Imperial County, should have been a quick and easy one. There would be little or no dispute regarding his guilt. So among several county-approved attorneys, he has randomly chosen one, without even thinking, since he was convinced that his destiny has already been decided. But to his luck, the attorney he chose was none other than Christopher Plord, an experienced attorney who had worked on several high-profile death penalty trials before, and would do something Cole would never even hoped for. Christopher would notice and discover something that would entirely change the course of the investigation in Cole's life. According to the documents in Cole's first case, the two officers, male and female, who worked on Cole's case found the manager of the brothel, next to which the murder happened. His name was John Jones, and he was the main witness during Cole's trial, who identified him as guilty. Since, according to him, he saw everything from the second-floor window, the victim came out of the car and went to the brothel and asked to call for a certain person, who, as he was told, wasn't there. Then he was returning to his car when a gang of several individuals approached him and began threatening him and trying to take his money. But the man didn't know English and was saying that he didn't understand them, after which they shot him dead and ran away. While they were running, according to Jones, he noticed one of them was limping, and he thought that maybe he had been shot in the leg by accident. The female officer who managed the case was only a rookie and didn't have much experience. She began looking for other cases of crimes in the area, and one of such cases was of Reggie, then a 19-year-old delinquent, who was arrested for working with a gang and producing and distributing drugs. One of his characteristics was that he had a shot injury in his leg. When she noticed the matching description, she immediately told her partner, who was also just a rookie, that he was the shooter. Based solely on her conjecture and first-thought conclusion, Reggie was sentenced to life for first-degree murder and imprisoned. As the case went on, Christopher began to look into Cole's old case files from his first sentence. The victim of the 1994 murder was a 29-year-old man who was shot with a gun, but in the documents he found preserved fingerprint analyses that didn't match Cole's. A pathologist, whom Plord hired to re-examine the man's autopsy, discovered that the fatal gunshot could not have been fired from ground level, where Cole would have been. The entry point was at a 40-degree angle. It had to have come from either an upstairs window or the roof. Plord also found a police report from April 1st, just 3 days after the man's murder, that described Cole fleeing from police. According to the report, Cole jumped off the handlebars of a friend's bicycle and ran down the street without a limp, an impossible feat for someone nursing a fresh bullet wound in the leg. As was discovered later, his shot wound was from the time he was 13 years old, years before the murder case. It was clear that the investigation, as detailed by the officers and tried in court, did not match what actually happened in the 1994 case. Christopher took all of this evidence to court and proved that Reggie had nothing to do with the 1994 murder, and instead the manager, John Jones, whose testimony matched the evidence, was the most probable suspect. And on the day of Cole's death penalty trial, after interrogation, Jones admitted in court that he invented much of the story and that he had never seen Reggie Cole, but he lied to the officers because they were inexperienced, easy to manipulate, and wanted to close the case as soon as possible to earn a reputation. Because of this, he successfully used them to cover himself. After seeing the evidence, the court staff and the officers were shocked. Reggie Cole had been wrongfully convicted and imprisoned for over 10 years. He was cleared of his first conviction and proclaimed to be innocent. His second sentence for the murder of Eddie Clark, the Devil, was reduced to second-degree murder. And in 2017, after 16 years of prison, he won the federal civil rights lawsuit against the state and was compensated with $5.2 million. This was the end of this extremely captivating case. If you wish to see more videos like this one, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. See you in the next one.